Welcome to the final project. In the Chapter 13 folder, which is the final project folder in Blackboard, you'll find this document, which has some directions and hints about the final project. You'll also find a folder of student exercise files that you'll need for the final project. And thirdly, you'll find a folder in which you will be uploading your deliverables like you did for Chapter 6, the midterm project. Now with this final project, you're actually going to be creating a brand new company. You're going to be accessing a 30-day trial to QuickBooks and creating a company called Raincross Auto Detailing. So you're basically going to be following directions as you see here. There's the name, there's the website, and what I did was on this document that you can find in the folder, I've screenshotted and then pasted into the file pictures of what it now looks like, because as you know, QuickBooks changes quite a bit, and I wanted to make sure you were familiar with what it looks like now. So when you click on this free trial, what changes below all of these versions of QuickBooks is these change to try it free, and the one that you want to click on is the one that says plus. Bear in mind you're going to have to use a different email address than you used when you set up your Puppy Love account, so you might have to create a new one if you don't already have another email address. Google provides a free email, multiple actually if you would like. Okay. And that's what it looks like, again, just a little bit up close. Okay, now with regard to the new company setup, they provide you with all the information, but they kind of give it to you in one big batch here, and it's not set up like the process goes actually. And so what I did is for the new company setup, I copied down or typed out the questions that QuickBooks will ask you, and then the answers based on the information that is provided here. And with regard to these credit card and bank card accounts, I set those up as well to make sure you had the right account type and detail as well. So you can work both with the book and with this document that I've created for you. On the very next page, page 10, is a chart of accounts that you are to match your chart of accounts in your company to. Now there will be some accounts that you will need to make inactive, such as shipping or other business expenses. Remember, you go to the far right, click down the drop down arrow, and then click on Make Inactive. Sometimes you'll have to edit accounts, like for example, this account will probably say job supplies, so you need to edit that and make that service supplies. And then in other cases, you may have to add brand new accounts, like general operating expenses or other miscellaneous expense. So make sure that you have your chart of accounts look like the one that you see here. Now with regard to sales tax, I also provide a little bit of a hint there on setting up sales tax, because it has changed a bit from what you see here at the bottom of the page here. So please follow these steps. Remember, like Chapter 8, I believe, I'm sorry, Chapter 7, you're going to have to manually change the sales tax rate to be 8.5% on all sales receipts or invoices that feature products. Services are not taxable. On the next page, page 256 and 257, you will be uploading CSV files, and you learned how to do that on pages 46 through 48, so you can go back to that to get a little bit of a refresher. But essentially, when you're uploading customers, you would go to the sales or invoicing link in the left menu pane, and then choose customers, and then there's a link for import customers. For vendors, you would go to expenses, then choose vendors and import vendors. For services and non-inventory items, a little bit different. You'll be going to sales, product and services, and then choose new, and then import. And you would be using that same process for the inventory items as well. Okay, then you will be preparing and submitting your deliverables. And again, those deliverables can be submitted going to Blackboard, the Chapter 13 folder, and within the Chapter 13 Final Project folder, there's another folder called Submit Your Deliverables. With regard to creating the daily transactions, I'm going to, in the first week, give you both the document, as you can see here, and then you can use the check figures that I provide there. I also will be giving you some hints as well in this Word document. After the first week of transactions, so you'll notice I'll hold here for a moment so that you can get a good look at these. So there are all of our types of forms that you need to fill out, and then the amounts that they should equal. You can stop the video if you want, and then work on your project and refer to this if you'd like. I also indicate in some cases the expense account that needs to be used. Now the reason I'm doing this for the first week is there's 3 weeks that follow, and for those weeks I'm going to give you check figures in dollars, but I'm not going to give you forms. And I want to give you a head start, so to speak, so that you could refresh your memory on how you will be submitting those. And here are the weeks that follow. I'm not telling you the type of form to fill out, but I'm giving you check figures. And there is week 2, in case you'd like to stop your video and either screenshot that or perhaps work on your project or make notes to your book. That first item is already set off for you, so I'm going to raise this a little bit so you can see the entire page. And again, you can stop the video and make notes to your books. This is week 3, and there are check figures. Please use those to check your work. And then where you see the asterisk here, here's information. We need to create a new account, charitable contributions. There's the type, account type, and detail type. There's the remainder of week 3. This says service supplies. And again, you can stop the video and make notes in your text. More check figures. And there's week 4. Now, if your figures do not equal the check figures, please first go to your journal and make sure all of the amounts match on what I've given you here as a reference number. Make sure all of your journal entries match, and then if you still can't find it, send me an email and I can help you with that. on Monday, December 20th, you have to set up 2 equity type accounts, one for each of the partners, Chris partner distribution and then Eric partner distribution. And there are some specific directions for that in that Word document here that I've given you. The remainder of week 4 and some check figures. You'll be setting up a new fixed asset account called Machinery and Equipment. The name of the account is Machinery and Equipment. The type is fixed asset, the detail type, Machinery and Equipment. And again, please make sure that your check figures equal. If they don't, then please go back to your journal, compare your journal amounts to the figures that you see here. Then you will be preparing your second set of deliverables as of December 23rd. And again, you go back to Blackboard to submit those. And then your last week is where you will make one adjusting entry. And then you'll be doing your reconciliations. You'll also be doing an inventory adjustment. Okay, there's nothing much there other than to indicate that the account should be Machinery and Equipment. And the only thing of note here is that when you're calculating the December web hosting amount, you take the web hosting for an entire year and divide by 12 months in the year, and that's $50 per month. So you'll be reducing the account prepaid expenses and then increasing the expense account called advertising promotion. Again, a set of check figures, and then your last group of deliverables. And each of the deliverables has a different point credit based on the amount of work you have to do to arrive at them. And that's the end of the project, but I do want to go over just a couple of things on the Word document. Okay, I'm going to be scrolling in a little bit for this. Okay, so for daily transactions, just a couple of things to keep in mind. Remember that when you sell products, you're going to have to adjust the sales tax rate to 8.5%. Services are not taxable. I already told you about the demonstration video. Make sure all money received goes into the undeposited funds account. You're going to have to create that most likely, and I give you directions for how to create that on the very next page up at the top here. Now don't rush through this. You're going to have at least 2 weeks based on our current schedule. Of course, that depends on how quickly you get your work done. Some people will have more because they're further ahead. Some people might have less because they might be a little behind. Remember that with products, we already talked about that. We already talked to undeposited. Here we go. Okay, this is the area that I'm most concerned because it's one of the hallmarks of QuickBooks to use forms to create journal entries. But if you aren't sure of the correct form, you may be recording that transaction incorrectly. When you're receiving cash, most likely you're going to be filling out a sales receipt because you're selling good or service and getting paid cash immediately. If you're receiving a check, it could still be a sales receipt if you're delivering goods or services and getting paid immediately, or it could be that they already owe money on an existing invoice. An invoice is used when you're delivering goods or services and you are not getting paid, and the debit for the invoice is to accounts receivable. So if you're receiving a check, it might be that they're paying off that invoice, in which case you have to use receive payment. If they're paying you by credit card or debit card, most likely, again, it's a sales receipt. Now, for when you're paying for things, when you immediately pay for something, you should most likely be using an expense. That's if you're paying by cash or credit or debit card. The thing is, you want to make sure you're using the correct account. If you're paying by debit card, you should be selecting your checking account. If you're paying by credit card, you have to select the credit card account. And if I were you, I would create a payment method called debit card. You already have one for your credit card and for check. Create one that says debit card. There are some transactions that specifically say that you're writing a check. If so, look at that very carefully and then choose check. Make sure you're choosing the right thing. If you are paying off a bill, even if it's with a check, you have to use pay bills. So if perhaps it started out as a purchase order or even just a bill that you received, the credit when you're using to enter a bill, the credit is to accounts payable. The only way to debit accounts payable is using the pay bills form. Note that there are lots of new customers. Now, it's not required that you create a new customer when it's a sales receipt transaction, but I would highly recommend it for tracking purposes, both for QuickBooks, for your project, when you're trying to identify different transactions, but also in the real world. It's good to know who you're selling your merchandise or services to. So you don't have to provide with addresses and what have you if there aren't any, but do create new customers. When you're entering bills, or even sometimes expenses, QuickBooks tries to help you by pre-recording items in that bill for you or that expense for you. If that's not what you're buying, then click on the trash can to the far right and get those items off of there. You don't want to use something that's pre-recorded. Record only what that expense or purchase is for. Be careful of that because that happened in one of the chapters earlier in the semester. Let's see, I think when you create a purchase order and then receive the items and you have to create a bill later, make sure you only have the items from that purchase order, kind of similar to this one. QuickBooks often adds things onto the bill that you bought before. And then one more thing here. If you're buying car wash supplies or inventory, you should be using the items detailed, which is toward the bottom of the screen. But if what you're paying for is a service or something that you have to use an expense account for, then use category details. They use the word category to mean account. So if you need to debit a particular account, use that section. If you need to add to supplies or inventory, use the items details section. Okay, so before you begin, it would be a good idea to create some new accounts, undeposited funds, prepaid rent, and prepaid expenses. And there's the information on how to do that. And I give you some specific hints, things that I thought were a bit confusing or that I may have had trouble with when I went through the project, because I did this project and just this past week. And that's it. We take you straight through January 3rd. And on January 3rd, you're going to have to be uploading transactions, their CSV files. I had no problem with the banking one because when you go to the banking link in the left pane and then click on the account there, it gives you the option of uploading banking transactions. However, you didn't have that option with the credit card account. It didn't appear as a rectangular shaped item in the banking menu when you looked at that screen. To actually create that or I should say make it appear, you have to go to the gear menu, then import data, then banking data, and then you choose the file from Blackboard, that student data files folder, and then for the credit card account. And then after importing, you have to make sure that you choose the QuickBooks account that you're linking it to. So be careful, do that methodically. Don't rush through any of this. And I noticed that when I was working with a number of folks on Chapter 5, you forgot that the very next step after importing these transactions is that you have to go back to that banking link and then either add or match transactions. At that point, when you're matching transactions, usually the matches are not a problem. You can just click on them. But when you're adding transactions, make sure you choose the correct expense account. For example, if it's a gas station, you can choose automobile expenses. If it's a deli, you can use meals and entertainment. And the way you change the account at that point is you click on the transaction itself that you want to add before you click on the add button. And then it gives you a chance to change the name of the account. Otherwise, it puts all new transactions into uncategorized expenses. And I think that's it. So as you're working through this, if you have any questions, just send me an email. And you know I've got the Zoom office hours on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 1 to 2. And then on Thursdays from 10 to 12. You can always pop in on one of those, or you can just email any questions. Good luck with everything. You're going to do just fine.